Alright, in this video I'm going to talk about modernism and how it affected the literary community. It's had a pretty outlasting effect if you're talking in terms of, postmodernism and how it kind of affected that in that sense. Modernism would obviously depict newness and innovative qualities, which would oppose that of realism. That was stated by Michael Plant in the article Modernism. Retained much of its prominence through humanistic qualities. Also, it kind of talked about society and government, and oftentimes it talked about religion. In government, you would obviously relate it to possibly the foreign policy. An article, "Realism in U.S. Foreign Policy" by David Baldwin, it actually speaks about how realism affected uh, like post World War One and how our foreign policy kind of correlated with that of realism and realism thinking. Qualities of that would be realistic events, an actual plan of survival, possibly war tactics, anything like that. So realism pretty much opposed modernism in that sense, whereas many policymakers can't really use modernism to their benefit. Modernism kind of affects a more innovative yet creative and unrealistic style of literature. Stepping away from realism and going back to modernism, those qualities that I was discussing earlier would be more of possibly abstract ideals, thinking, and in art, actual physical abstract lines. Um, in modernism, you saw not too many religious resolutions in compositions, which would basically mean just a novel without religious ending or a religious resolution, basically, to that problem. Knowing this is a postmodernism piece, I bring up J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye because I think it is a valid um, example of what I was just speaking of. Basically, throughout that entire novel, there was no religious resolutions or religious interferences. Salinger made sure to really keep that central focus. He did not want to really show that religion was going to, in some way, interfere the main character's resolution or ending toward the novel itself. Various authors are actually following into this category by writing about communism, writing about different theories or um, political ideas that could actually improve a society. So you have authors such as Karl Marx who went out there and wrote about new theories, which would obviously be communism. Um, so it really didn't have a huge influence on the government itself, but it spoke about government. And I think that's when you can kind of say that modernism was not necessarily an influential style upon society itself, but that it was a representation of society, which brings to another video about society and how it kind of is shaped by that. Modernism also spoke about creative ideals that were not seen in any previous styles of literature. You have new artists who are going out there and are really depicting something that's completely new and radically inclined. And I think that's what made modernism so controversial yet basically reputable and prominent. And that is why we are still in a modernism time period and within literature. I think its outlasting effect just has a lot to say about where Americans are and where the whole world is.